Good evening. At 6:01, I'd like to call to order the Huntsville Independent School District. First of all, our public hearing for the 2026-2027 school year budget and tax rate. We'll go over that first. We do have a quorum, Miss Angie. Miss Owens is unable to attend tonight, but we do have a quorum. All of the members are present. Mr. Fanning, a certification of public notice of this meeting was given in accordance with the provision of section 551.002 of the Texas Government Code.
Yes, sir, it was.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Mr. Brown, thank you so much. Will you begin your presentation for tonight's public hearing?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to say thank you to the board, the superintendent, the assistant superintendents, campus administrators, department heads for the many hours spent developing this budget. This process began back in the spring, and the result of a lot of hard work is what I believe to be a very good budget for our school district. We were able to include many of the requests from our departments, along with maintaining an equalized per student budget for our different campus levels, while continuing many of our district priorities over the past few years. So,
It's on. Click down here.
there we go, thank you. Okay, so just to highlight part of this process, this is not all inclusive, but we began in February asking our campuses and departments to evaluate their needs, and then we received the campus and department budget requests at the end of March. After reviewing those requests, we held a public meeting of the board May 7th to review the first draft of the budget. At the regularly May board meeting, the board approved our recommended compensation schedule for the next school year. And then we held a second meeting to review the draft budget in June. After receiving the property values from the appraisal district at the end of July, we held our final budget workshop on August 6th, which then brings us to tonight, where we will recommend a budget and tax rate. There we go. So the first thing I'd like to highlight is our, excuse me, our average daily attendance, or ADA. So for our district, it's expected to increase by 323 from the prior school year, based on increasing in-district student ADA by 122 students, and our TOPS online students increasing by 201. This is one of the main drivers in calculating our budget, since most of our funding comes from average daily attendance and not enrollment. So this slide shows our property values over the last several years. The state comptroller provides the adjusted state certified property value, which TEA uses along with our ADA that we just looked at, to calculate our actual state funding amount during the settle-up. The Walker County Appraisal District provides the certified property value for 2026, which is used to calculate our local tax revenue. TEA has taken the Walker County Appraisal District number, and they have estimated the projected comptroller value, which ends up with an increase of 2%, which we'll use to calculate our local taxes. Just to point out something on this, you do see a decrease the prior year. And so you see the taxable value decreasing 2.1%, and then this year's TEA projected comptroller value you see increasing 2%.
Mr. Brown, if you don't mind if I comment on that.
Sure.
When we get to the tax rate in a moment, when we're talking about the TEA compression that's mandated, the decrease of 2.1% in 2025 was after the state legislature passed the additional funding from the state, helping reducing the property taxes, and then it impacts the rate, but we didn't have to raise the rate to have additional funding. The state provided that.
Correct. So they increased the homestead exemption for homeowners up to $140,000 from $100,000, and the over 65 folks and some other categories were able to have exemptions up to $200,000. And so that is the driving factor of why the the taxable value decreased that 2.1% last year. So, looking at our recommended tax rate. So our M&O tax rate, which is our maintenance and operations for tax year 2026, the first component of that rate is the maximum compressed rate, which is referred to as the MICR, and that is set by the Texas Education Agency. So we don't set that rate, that is calculated by TEA and then provided to our district. On top of that rate, are golden pennies set by TEA, and those are allowed by all school districts. We have 4 of those golden pennies. And then in 2017, November 2017, our voters approved 4 additional golden pennies, and 1.29 is the compressed amount now of copper pennies that were approved by the voters. The golden and copper pennies just delineate different amounts of funding per penny that the state will award to districts based on their taxing effort. So when you add up the 2 rates set by TEA along with the 2 amounts approved by our voters, you come to our M&O rate of 70.98 cents. And we don't control any of those items. Those are set by the voters and TEA.
Mr. Brown, a quick question on the 2 November 2017, that was the TRA vote that we did that allowed us to move out of INS over to M&O, so we didn't.
So we reduced our INS rate at that time, and then we were able to, the voters approved the increase of the same 6 cents that at that time we reduced 6 cents off the INS tax rate, and we were able to increase our maintenance and operations 6 cents at that time. 2 years later, the legislature compressed the 2 copper pennies that we had down to 1.29. So, the INS tax rate, the interest and sinking, which is what we use to pay our debt on our outstanding bonds, that 14.5 cents is the rate to pay those voter-approved outstanding bonds.
And those were approved at roughly, on the valuation of the bonds at the time, at 10 cents, and we only had to raise it by 7 based upon the rates and things of that nature during that time period of the bonds.
Yes, during 2021, our INS rate had reduced down to 7.5 cents. And then when the voters approved those outstanding bonds, like you said, we had, we thought it was gonna cost 10 cents. We only had to increase 7 in order to cover, once we scheduled out that debt and set that up in a certain way, we were able to not increase the whole 10 cents. So we only increased 7, and we haven't increased that since. So looking at the recommended tax rate for 26-27 school year, we are recommending the same M&O rate and the same INS rate for a total tax rate of 85.48 cents per $100 valuation of property. And as you can see, that's the same as the last 2 years. And there's a little bit of history there for you as well, just to see how much the rate had been several years prior.
Paul?
Yes, sir.
As far as those estimated property values, I mean, that's something that is provided to us from the appraisal district, correct?
So the appraisal district sends us their property values, and so we don't set the property value that is provided.
Okay.
And then TEA uses that property value from the appraisal district to then calculate what they believe the comptroller value will be. So this lot,
I'm sorry, while that's on there, and I think for those that are here to listen tonight, it's important to understand TEA has their hand in this at a pretty heavy weight. And they look at the property values a little bit more stringently than other taxing entities. And they then put that on what we should do on the MICR rate and in other formulas, right?
Correct, because the way school districts are funded, it's not an exact, but basically for every dollar we collect in taxes, we're gonna lose a state dollar. And so the TEA and the comptroller, the governor's office, legislature, et cetera, they're working with those state dollars and trying to manage that, for the state. And so, yeah, they're dictating that MICR rate so that it produces the result of the state revenue that they're wanting. And so, so yes, we have to tax at that rate, that they provided us. On the M&O side. Okay, this just shows, the same tax rate history, but just in a chart, for you to see, over the past few years. You'll notice that it has dropped from $1.17.5 down to the 85.48 we're recommending this year. So for comparison purposes, we've listed many districts in the surrounding area, and as you can see, Huntsville ISD, it ranks near the bottom in our total tax rate for last year. So this is last year's 25-26 school year M&O and INS rates for surrounding area districts. And so that just kind of gives you an idea of where Huntsville lands in that comparison. We anticipate similar results this year. Since our rate is staying the same, we don't anticipate moving up by any means in that comparison. So this slide shows the impact to the average homeowner in our district. The homestead exemption, we mentioned earlier, is $140,000, and over 65 homestead exemption is $200,000. And so the 2025 school district taxes decreased for the average homeowner by $154. And then, as you can see, the 2026 average homeowner is increasing $92 from that prior year. So this slide shows a graph of our budget per student comparing last year to this school year. And as you can kind of see, the numbers are a little small, sorry about that, but trying to compare those. But 72% of our budget is spent on instruction and instructional support. And then you can see some of the other areas that we report on. So the 26-27 recommended budget begins by showing the revenue amounts, which total $120.8 million for general funds, $7.9 million for debt service, and $3.9 million for food service, which is a 1.2% increase over last year's final projected revenues. And so looking at those revenues, particularly the general fund, that's the bulk of our budget that we'll be asking for approval tonight. The $120.8 million, you see the largest numbers are gonna be tax collections at the top of $34 million. And then Foundation School Program, which is our state revenue from TEA of about $79.5 million. The debt service, most of that revenue is coming from tax collections when the voters approve those bonds. And then we do have some state revenue that's coming in as a whole harmless for the homestead exemption that the legislature passed last session. And then our food service, as you can see, the federal programs is where the bulk of that funding is coming from. So our breakfast and lunch programs and dinner programs actually are providing the federal funding for that. And so that's the bulk of the revenues you see there in our food service. Looking at the expenditures, so this is showing for each of the funds as well as the different function codes that we have set up. And as you can see, the total general fund budget is $120.8 million, $7.9 million for debt service, and $5.4 million for food service, for a total budget of $134.1 million. The increase over the prior year's school final projected expenditure budget is approximately 2.96%. This just goes through some of the budget highlights of how we built our budget. So we built the budget with a higher district average daily attendance. We did receive additional state revenue from the past legislative session, combined with some district savings that allowed for approximately $2.9 million in compensation increases for our employees, which is our 10th consecutive year with an employee raise. We're recommending a balanced general fund operating budget while maintaining the same M&O tax rate. And then, one thing to mention on that, while I'm on the general fund's operating budget, we are proposing a balanced budget there, and most districts in the state are not. They are passing deficit budgets. They're not as in good of a shape as we are in this time right now. So we're fortunate to be able to give the raises to our staff and take care of our needs while also maintaining that balanced budget. With the approval of the $127 million in bonds back in 2021, the interest in seeking rate for our debt service will remain at 14.5 cents, along with the additional state aid that you saw earlier. That'll allow for also a balanced INS budget that we're proposing. And then finally, food service will have an intentional $1.5 million deficit budget to upgrade our cafeteria facilities, which will allow us to reduce our food service fund balance so that we can be within the Texas Department of Agriculture fund balance requirements. And so we've got some needs. We need to spend those reserves and make some good decisions on how we do that. And we felt like that was the best course of action. And so that was an intentional deficit budget spend in that fund.
And Paul, that's why in the food service category, we see that difference there. It's not that we're intentionally running a deficit. We want to spend that fund balance down and not have to collect that to fund it.
Correct. Yeah, we would have normally had a balanced budget in that fund, but because we wanted to do these capital projects for that. And those funds can only be spent on that program, so.
We don't want to lose that because that's additional funding that doesn't have to be taxed, revenue funding.
Correct.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
I just want to make sure that I'm seeing this and really highlight this and commend the district. So this general fund recommendation, balanced budget, while giving our 10th consecutive raise. And during that time, we've also decreased the tax rate for our citizens. And the budget is only increasing at a number that's less than inflation? Is that?
That's correct.
Great job. Thank you.
This slide shows our current and recent history of salary increases. So you can see the raises that y'all approved, the board approved back in May. $3,500 teacher raise, $1,750 instructional assistant raise, and then 5% for all of our other employees. Just to highlight, the new rookie teacher pay increased to $56,000 from $52,500 the prior year. And then we increased all the remaining rungs of the teacher pay scale by that same $3,500. And then finally, we had increased all the employees that are in the health insurance program for our district. We increased the district contribution, from $400 to $450 per month. And finally, we have some great news. Within the budget recommendation, we've allocated a one-time stipend to be paid in November. With $1,500 going to all returning full-time employees, $750 to all returning part-time employees, $1,000 to all new full-time employees, and $500 to all new part-time employees. And with that, Mr. President, that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Browning. Board members will have another opportunity in the regular meeting to ask additional questions when it comes back up. But if you'll have any right now, you can, or wait till later. Okay, we'll move over into the public hearing part of that. Ms. Schweitzer, I believe we do have one comment. If you have your timer, you know however, which one you want to use. We do have one form filled out, Ms. Donna Pignon. You want to come there and give us a moment to get the timer working?
How much time do I have?
3 minutes. And we don't do it very often, so we have to figure this thing out. We'll just state your name.
I'm Donna Mignon. I've lived in this district for almost 40 years. First time to give public comment at one of these meetings. I heard some new terms tonight. Golden pennies, copper pennies, M&O, INS. The budget process with the ISD looks to be pretty complicated. Much more so than what I've seen with city and county and other districts. So probably unnecessarily complicated by state rules, I'm assuming. So, hat tip to whoever tried to put all that together and make sense. I'm here today because at the end of the day, there's a tax increase. And maybe you guys haven't noticed, but the economy's in pretty rough shape out there. Every dollar that you extract from a homeowner, and more especially the business owners who get no exemptions, by the way, that's one less dollar that they've got to save for their kids' college, to fund their retirement, to reinvest into their business, or to support a local business here in town. I'm gonna encourage you guys to go back to the drawing board and bring this into no new revenue budget. Understand, you all are elected, you asked for this job, and it's a hard job, and you're not being paid for it. It's a volunteer, hard job. But the job is the budget at the end of the day. So, wants are endless. Needs, genuine needs are endless. They're infinite. Tax dollars are not infinite. You've got 3 taxing entities already signaling that they're gonna raise property taxes all at the same time. And I know, you have no control over what the county does. You have no control over what the city does. I don't know that anybody knows what the hospital district does. But at the end of the day, you can be part of the problem or you can be part of the solution. The burden's getting worse and worse every year with no relief in sight. I encourage you to go back to the drawing board, figure out ways to make this come in at no new taxes. You're not gonna change my life if you raise those taxes, but you will hurt the small businesses, you will hurt the blue collar workers, you will hurt those people trying to buy that first home. The people at the lowest income piece are the ones that are gonna get hit the hardest. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Mignon. I believe that's all the ones we have filled out, and don't see any others. So we will move on to, actually, we'll adjourn the public